I believe that one of the biggest lessons that we can learn from sacred plants is that psychedelics, they are not only about molecules or substances, they are also about culture. They are also about politics, even cosmopolitics, which means that we need to consider plants' interests. We need to consider nature interests. So what I really love about plant medicine cosmologies is that they are so diverse, so rich in information. The plurality of worlds that is within the psychedelic field, so to speak, is what really interests me.
Hi everyone, welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. Now I have with me Glauber Assis. Welcome and thank you so much for spending time with us.
No, thank you. It's a
How
pleasure.
are you enjoying the conference?
I'm having a great time here at Breaking Conventions. My very first time not only in this conference but in UK. And I feel this is like a very unique model of conference, and I can feel that it's also deep-rooted in community and fostering bonds of kinship and relationship.
Well, that's amazing. That's a great highlight for the conference. I'm sure the team would appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I think that's also the essence behind it. They really want this community sense of coming together. Mm-hmm. So for our listeners, I just want to say a few lines of your bio, but we will add everything in the show notes so they can connect and look at your work independently as well. Glauber is a researcher of sacred plants and their traditions, a Santo Daime church leader at his home, Brazil, and psychedelic dad to 3 children with his wife, Jacqueline, and he's a co-founder of the Psychedelic Parenthood community. This is wonderful. So we can talk about so many things just coming to my mind. First of all, let's start with how does it feel to be a leader of the Santo Daime?
Wow.
It's a sacrament, right?
It is, yes, definitely. But I've been as an ayahuasca practitioner for 16 years right now. And I really love the way that Brazil was the place in which ayahuasca religions, they were created. So until very recently, Brazil was the only country in the world that had ayahuasca religions. And I always was really excited about this possibility of putting different traditions, different philosophies together. That is the purpose of Santo Daime, bringing different traditions, different connections into the same ritual, the same container. But I wasn't really happy with like how Santo Daime leaders, they were so conservative, like a lot of patriarchy, machismo, gender views, and also lack of freedom in a way. And I also wanted to be more connected with indigenous traditions, indigenous peoples. And since I couldn't find my own church, I founded a church there in Brazil.
Amazing. So you're building, similar to what you just shared about the conference, is it more embedded in the community?
Yes, and I believe that it's very impressive how ayahuasca Brazilian religions, they expanded towards the whole planet, but actually the model of expansion has some flaws, like it's too wide, for example. So something that I really believe it's important for people who are interested in Brazilian spirituality and Brazilian religions is also to recover all this background and this trajectory that is deep-rooted also in different kinds of cosmology, indigenous cosmology, Afro-Brazilian spirituality, and so on. So
makes sense, because otherwise it can look or perceived as a church. It's an outlet to be able to access ayahuasca.
Yes, this is a big topic because this also helps us to think about the bigger picture. Like, since we are very connected, globally connected, we are all talking about the global psychedelic community. We are under this risk of just copying the same model and imitating each other, while we can be self confident in understanding that we all have our personal flavor. So what I really like about ayahuasca Brazilian religions is that they are part of the psychedelic universe, but in a very unique way. They don't need to lose their identity to have the right to be in this movement. You know.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message indeed. So, for our listeners that never heard of psychedelic churches, especially Santo Daime, what can you tell our listeners how they can learn about this and how long this has been practiced? I know you're trying to, coming from your background, you're trying to bring a bit more of a diversity and bring more your own take on and flavor into it. Maybe our listeners first time heard about an ayahuasca church.
Yeah, so I believe that one of the biggest lessons that we can learn from sacred plants is that psychedelics, they are not only about molecules or substances, they are also about culture, they are also about politics, even cosmopolitics, which means that we need to consider plants' interests, we need to consider nature interests. So what I really love about plant medicine cosmologies is that they are so diverse, so rich in information, in different ways of relating ourselves to nature, to sacred plants, to psychedelics, to this amazing cosmic dance that we call consciousness. Is like they are plural. So the plurality of worlds that is within the psychedelic field, so to speak, is what really interests me. So when we are talking about ayahuasca, this is actually a generic term to talk about very different indigenous cosmovisions and traditions. So, for example, many indigenous peoples in the Western Amazon, they use ayahuasca in a spiritual way. But every single indigenous peoples, they have their own language, their own terminology. So, for example, for the Yawanawa people, ayahuasca is called uni. For the Huniquin people, it's called Nishipan. For the Ashaninka people, it is called Kamarampi, which means that this is so like amazing, full of information, full of lessons, of teaching, of knowledge. So my point being, we are entering a space that is not only ancestral, but is actually something that can really, really teach us how to foster different ways of life. So I believe that for people who are listening us and who are not really used to ayahuasca, the biggest invitation to begin with is to connect with different realms, different worlds, and the otherness.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. What would be the benefit of practicing or coming to the medicine of ayahuasca through the church rather than, medical model, other models, recreational, whatever, however people are using it at the moment? What are the benefits of coming to it in a sort of a organization such as Santo Daime?
Yeah, I think that from a broader perspective, the biggest benefit is to be part of a community of meaning, because we are all supporting the psychedelic therapy right now, and we all know that psychedelics, they can really help people. But there's the other side as well. Psychedelics, they can harm people as well. And it's not like that you take psychedelics and then you're going to have like a kind of an insight or enlightenment. It can be the contrary as well. You can be even more attached to your beliefs. And so what really makes the difference, it's the psychedelics within a community that have purpose, that has meaning, that has like a network of mutual support, mutual acknowledgement, that gives back to the land, gives back to indigenous peoples. So I believe that these ayahuasca traditions, they carry this old lineage. And when we are not alone, when we can share, we can be heard, but we can also hear from other people's stories. This is where collective healing is, you know?
Happens. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am aware of facilitators or the leading Santo Daime churches, like there's in Netherlands, there's quite a few Canada, right?
Uh-huh.
I always get a really good feedback that people have joined them and practiced it through, these organizations in that way. Makes sense. It is not just the one aspect, but it's more complex and all-encompassing.
Definitely, and we can talk about many, many different layers. So, for example, we could even defy the very notion of psychedelics as mind manifesting, because when you're speaking of Santo Daime ceremonies, we are also talking about dancing ceremonies. In some Santo Daime rituals, people dance for 12 hours in a row under the effect of ayahuasca, all together in the same rhythm. So we could maybe talk about somodelics, like it's our body movement. It's also about our body. So what's really beautiful about the ceremonial context is that we can talk about many different aspects of the psychedelic experience. So in the global north, a lot of people, they are focusing on the visuals, but we also have other senses. So we can also talk about music and also talk about hearing. We can also talk about being with other people, sharing the same room, and how we are interconnected also in our feelings, and how every person in the room can help others to regulate themselves.
I love that. That's the original message, right? Preserving that. Thank you so much for sharing. What about your co-founded the Psychedelic Parenthood? What's the message there, and what are you actually offering there?
Amazing. There are many messages. One is that the psychedelic future must include families, because even from like a clinical medical perspective, if you want to create a world of zero trauma, for example, that is one of the MAP's goals for the year of 2070, we must acknowledge that we are speaking of adults that are now little babies. So we need to understand that children, they must be part of the field. And so it's not about giving children psychedelics. That's very superficial. It is about understanding that if we are parents, if we are children, if we are sisters and brothers, it's not good for us to separate in little boxes, like this is me as a parent, this is me as a psychedelic researcher. So the point being, thousands of people who are fostering this burgeoning movement, the psychedelic field, they're also parents, they're also caregivers, and they still don't have a network of support. So we are creating the very first international ecosystem of psychedelic parents and psychedelic caregivers to support each other. So our goal is, first of all, like in the long term, we want to change public opinion about psychedelics, so people can understand that this is actually not a new subject. People are afraid because it's like, this is very new. We don't know about this. Actually, this is very old, very ancestral. Like indigenous traditions, they have been fostering relationships with sacred plants since immemorial times. So we believe that if people, they can overcome the stigma that is actually not on drugs, but stigma against the otherness, against different cosmologies, different ways to relate ourselves with nature, we believe that we can also foster a much safer society. So this is in the long term. In the midterm, we also want to make sure that families, they can be safe in the psychedelic space. So we want to also make sure that we can carry scientific research also to support families. We know that tons of adolescents, they are now under drugs and antidepressants, Adderall, for example. But we know that psychedelic environments, they can be something good also for families to raise our children. My 3 children, they were born inside within an ayahuasca community, and they're healthy, they're happy children, and in the short term, we want to start hearing these invisible voices of single mothers, of families that are immigrants in the West, for example, like marginalized communities, and we want to make sure that these stories can be told.
Amazing. I love this message. What are your biggest challenges when you are spreading the message for psychedelic parenthood? Do you get pushbacks? Do you get judgment? Do you get rejection?
Yes, a lot. So many of them. One, like talking about the psychedelic field, people are afraid of bringing this topic to conversation because they can lose support. Like if someone realizes that there is a funder like giving money to a psychedelic parenthood initiative, this can be something challenging. Some people, they are inviting us to maybe change the name. So instead of psychedelic parenthood community, could be something like plant medicine community to be more palatable. But you don't want to be palatable because you don't want to be eaten by the system. We want to be present. We want to have...
Be direct and transparent.
Yeah, that's true. And then, so this is one of the challenges, like how can we also fundraise? Because this is community-based. We are not looking for profit, but we are looking for being present. So for example, for me to travel from Brazil to the UK, to spread this word and the seeds, it's expensive. So now we are trying to find ways to get support because we want our community to be free for everybody. So if you want to go and see a little bit about our work, it's psychedelicparenthood.org, and the membership program is free for everybody. But also I think we are just realizing also that the psychedelic field, it also carries a lot of this prejudice. So we want to overcome this. Like some people, they say, like even like very brilliant minds that, no, please don't talk about it because people, their children, they're still developing their brains, but they're missing their point for many reasons. But one of the reasons, and I think this is one of the most important, that it's not only about the brain. We are ultimately talking about culture. So our point is not giving children psychedelics, it's giving children the possibility to be in a community. So for example, now at Breaking Convention, and thank you Breaking Convention for making this possible, Hattie and the whole team, we have a family space here. So this is something very new for the field. So we have big psychedelic conferences, but we also have a space for families. Mm-hmm. So we want to start creating family-friendly events, gatherings, conferences, to make sure that families are also welcome. So this is also an important part of the conversation, and also understanding that families, they need to be supported. So for example, there are lots of different kinds of prejudice against psychedelic families. Just to share one personal story, because since we have a humble, modest family in Brazil, when I travel, we need support. And then we tried, like for the very first time, to hire a nanny to support my wife and my family with the kids there. But then the nanny was an evangelical person. And then when she realized we were like taking ayahuasca, she needed, according to her, to ask permission to the pastor. And the pastor eventually said, no, like these people, they're like doing some very crazy things, so you should be far from that, just stay away. So this is like something very much often than we expect. And so also like when couples, they separate, they get a divorce or something, this bring a liability, so that you can sue the other person because it's a psychedelic person that's trying to bring the child to the container. So we want to make sure that our vision and our understanding about psychedelic families, it's not rooted in social stigma, religious fundamentalism, but rather in good science. That's our goal.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most important and powerful messages that I came across here.
Yeah,
it's so tangible and it's everywhere, and it's almost like elephant in the room because. Especially, I've been observing the psychedelic renaissance from the beginning. I think in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of explosion, right? And just look at the world. I mean, we've got millions and millions of people working with psychedelics. And yes, they are parents. No one ever talks about this aspect of, and so it's almost like separated. There is my life with the psychedelics, and then there is also my life over here, completely separate. I really hear your message. I think this is the biggest one to this day.
No, thank you, Susan, very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and also like talking directly to those who are parents, because I'm a parent too. I have 3 very beautiful little children. And so I would like to ask you, like, do you feel comfortable being a psychedelic parent? How is it for you to share your experience? How is it when you go to like schools, your children's school meetings? Can you share about who you are and what you do? So, and why is it so difficult? Like, difficult being yourselves. So it's about also acceptance. It's about not needing permission for those who are forbidden for prohibiting nature to be part of nature as well. You know, we are already nature, and we can be the ones who we already are.
Totally agree. And so interesting. And yet behind closed doors and privately, a lot of moms, they email us, they have these conversations all the time. Is it ethical to give my child microdosing, for example, rather than Ritalin or SSRI for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, because they were diagnosed with ADHD at school? So we also have this growing issue in the Western world, that our children are already being prescribed SSRIs from the age of 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And we could bring even like a very naive question, but also very deep, like, is it ethical to give your children sugar when they're little children? Which means that it's not like that we are saying that people should just give children psychedelics, but they could diversify their sources of information and knowledge. So it's also about overcoming epistemic injustices, because here we are very attached to medical doctors' prescriptions, which is very important. But you also should hear from the indigenous voices, for example. They have been raising children and families in what we would call today psychedelic environments or psychedelic communities for centuries. So the point is, we should also be open to learn from different cosmologies and different epistemologies and systems of knowledge, you know?
I agree. Thank you so much for sharing this voice. It's so important. So we're going to add this psychedelicparenthood.org.
Yes, please.
Is that right? And hope to have you back maybe for a deep dive in the future, because this is just a kind of introduction to you and your work in this conference. And I see there's a great value here. And thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it very much. And I hope next time I can also bring my children.
I hope so. We'll have to see. And as a last words of wisdom, what would you like to say to our listeners?
Yes, I would like to say that psychedelic parenthood topic is still very sensitive. And there is this deep stigma that like psychedelic parents, they are not responsible, they are not healthy, they are not caring about the children. I can tell about my own story that psychedelics, they made me a much better parent, and I'm a much better person. And I've been learning how to love my children also. Hey, and this is this is a member of our community.
Such a
this is Ava. Come here.
Hey.
Jay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so I'm considering myself to be a better parent now. And this is not about not considering the risks. It's the contrary. So my final word is like, it's about harm reduction. So I want my children to be safe. I want the new generations to be safe and to be more informed about the risks. And that's one of the reasons why we need to foster these conversations, because this is, in a way, this is like similar to conversations about sex. Like, it's part of nature. It's going to happen anyway, eventually. But if we don't talk to our children, if we don't raise them, bringing this awareness, they might have problems. So the same thing regarding psychedelics. If we are open, honest, transparent enough to teach our children, to hear from them, they're going to be much more prepared adults to make their own decisions in an informed way.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. I love that she came right in the last moment. This is wonderful. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
And I'll be in touch with you and hope to have you back for a more deep dive in a more sort of quiet setting.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. What are your thoughts on psychedelic parenting? And what are your thoughts on this big elephant in the room? I always say that it's true. Very close to my own journeys as well. But one of the mottos that I started saying in the early days was, families trip together, stay together. You know, they say families train together, stay together. It's a little bit like that. I think psychedelics are all encompassing, and sanitizing them and separating them, it doesn't work at all. And I love this message. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.